very warm welcome this afternoon. My name is Alison McQuinney, and I am the Director of Development at the Harry Edwards Healing Sanctuary based in Sheer, Surrey. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome this afternoon to Dr. Tim Ridge, and he will be talking about healing energy therapy and the human energy field. What is the evidence? To give some background on Tim, Tim is a sixth generation general practitioner and a member of the Royal College of GPs. After completing his training at the London Hospital Medical College, Tim spent 3 years on the Ipswich Vocational Training Scheme before joining his father and uncle as a partner at the family practice in Enfield, Middlesex from 1976 to 2014. Specific medical interests during his career included home births and the local GP unit maternity unit deliveries, minor surgery, and the integration of complementary therapies into the NHS. This led to the establishment of an integrative project in 1993 called the Enfield Centre for Natural Health, which subsequently became a registered charity and continues its work today. On a personal level, Tim was involved with self-development courses for 25 years and learned to teach meditation and became a director of Soul Purpose UK, who organised the courses. An interest in healing arose from experiences on these courses and after attending the healing conference organised by Dr. Dan Benor in 1993. He joined the Dr. Healer Network. More recently, he trained as a Reiki master. Now retired from general practice, Tim is the chair of the Dr. Healer Network, healers and medical professionals working together to promote the benefits of the integration of healing into healthcare. And this brings us very nicely to today's topic. A very warm welcome, Tim, and I'll hand over to you to talk about this fascinating topic.
Well, bless you indeed, Alison. Thank you so much. And it's a great pleasure and honour to be talking and being associated more officially now with the Harry Edwards Healing Sanctuary since you invited me to be a patron, which is lovely. Yes, indeed. So sixth generation GP. None of my predecessors showed any great sort of divergence whatsoever from the standard scientific way of operating. Although, of course, way back they were doing leeches and bloodletting, and things moved on. My father was very much involved with medical politics and negotiating for better conditions, working conditions for GPs. So I sometimes look at myself and think, well, how have I wandered off the path and become a bit sort of, alternative or rebellious even? And I think it must be genetic, because we do have a non-conformist background when studying the family history of the Ridge family. So that's obviously come out in the sense of, well, I'll be a doctor, but I'll rebel a bit,
Absolutely.
But I have to give credits to my late wife, actually. I think she was my guide to go down the path I've gone down. She had several health problems, which led us to visit many different therapists. And so it was almost an A to Z of complementary therapy, looking for alternatives to standard therapies, which weren't always well tolerated or effective. And she was recommended to go on a personal development course called The Turning Point, probably in the late 80s. And at that stage, my attitude was, well, if you want to go and see and hang out with a bunch of weirdos, that's fine with me. Will you give me a lift to Chelsea? That's where they have. And I said, yes, I'll take you up there, but I'm not going in. And I saw her progress. I saw the benefits that she gained from doing this sort of workshop. And after about a year, I thought, well, I think I might actually dip my toe in the water. And they were running a lovely course called Listening Heart, which was designed to be for carers of any sort, whether you are teachers or social workers or nurses or doctors, caring in some way, or family carer. But it was designed to sort of make you more open your heart, open your energies up to being, listening with your heart as opposed to just doing, with your head. And I went up on this course, and there were probably about 30 of us there, all walks of life. You might have said 30 people off the street from the streets of Chelsea. Not typical maybe of England, but I mean, you know, they were just no expectations, no sort of preconceptions. And we did an exercise of sensing the human energy field. We all had to pair up, and we were given instructions by someone at the front who knew what they were doing, and sort of like, you know, okay, use your hands and just see what you can feel. And all around the room, people were saying, gracious me, I can feel something. It's like, what is this? What are you doing to us? You know, type of attitude.
It's amazing how you can pick it up, actually, isn't it?
Well, no training, no special, you know, just try this and see what happens. And I would say, without exception, everyone was able to pick up something. I think it's like any skill. Some people are born very good at it, and some people have to work jolly hard to get to a point of adequacy. But it was eye-opening. I mean, there's this whole energy world going on that I didn't know about. What's going on? Yeah. And I went on to do the next course, which was the Turning Point itself, and did more and more of the courses. I got more and more enthusiastic and involved, and ended up, I think, as I told you, becoming a director of the company Sole Purpose, which
Yes.
a wonderful experience. But we talked about healing, we talked about the chakras, and we talked about life, the universe, and everything really on these workshops. But we were encouraged to be energy conscious. And I think one of the tutors recommended that I go to a thing called the Dr. Healer Network, which I'd never heard of. I thought, not the BMA or the Royal College of GPs, what's going on? And it so happened that there was a conference coming up at the Regent's College, London, put on by Dan Benor at great expense, with experts being flown in from all across the globe. And it was a most amazing and you know, wonderful meetup of looking back on some of the leading lights of the day, and talking about the human energy field, first of all, because if you think about it, you can't really talk about healing with energy unless you believe there is such a thing as an energy field, or
Absolutely.
have that knowledge. And we had, at that time, I would say, the foremost researcher, Professor Valerie Hunt from UCLA, come over and gave us the most astounding talk about the human energy field, including video photography that she'd taken using a special filter on a standard video camera, showing the human energy field, what happens during meditation, what happens when you eat live food compared to processed dead food, so to speak. Absolutely riveting stuff. There were people from Russia, there were people from America, Australia. There was a lovely guy from Australia, and I'm wearing this t-shirt you might see in his honor. It's a chakra t-shirt.
Right.
And he was there, and talking about the chakras. There were people demonstrating laser acupuncture. There were martial artists demonstrating their ability to control their own energy fields, particularly using a device called the mind mirror to show the activity of the different hemispheres of the brain. And they would go into a meditation state for you know, very quickly, and then already hitched up to the mind mirror, which showed up on a computer screen. They said, right, I'm now ready. I'm going to lower the activity level on the left side of my brain on the screen. Okay. I'm now going to do the opposite. And what is happening? So I came out of that sort of thinking, well, I think I need to join the Dr. Healer Network.
Yes.
Because it's exciting, and it's putting me in touch with whole areas of fascination, further than just sensing the human field in a workshop. And I suppose I've gone on from there, really. It's a never-ending journey, really. There's always something more to discover, and we look at the literature in this country about human energy fields, and there's a whole lot more being done and published in other languages, which, of course, the English-speaking world tends to sort of ignore. You know, well, that's in Chinese, or that's in Japanese, or you know, that's in Polish. You know. Well, we can't talk about that, you know. No. But I think quite early on, I got to learn about Lynn McTaggart, who I'm sure you know very well, and what doctors don't tell you. And I think, what am I not telling people? You know?
Yeah, what don't you tell us?
Who's putting the gag on me? You know, no one. It's the only gag I've got is ignorance. You know, that's what I've got. You know, please inform me. So Lynn was fantastic. I went to a few of her conferences, and of course there was, you know, what doctors don't tell you. But the one I really enjoyed was The Field. I don't know if you ever read that book by Lynn, The Field.
I haven't personally, no.
No,
Do elaborate.
highly recommend The Field, because it was really saying, well, this is going on. This is part of the human energy condition which we need to be aware of, and these are the consequences of it. And she then went on to do a masterclass by a monthly magazine that you collected, like the old knowledge magazines way back in the old days, or collecting anything, you know, on a monthly basis, you know, like you know, the Eagle comic or something. But it was a masterclass for miraculous living, was the subtitle, Living the Field. And so that explored over 2 big volumes of collected publications, every aspect of the human energy field you could imagine. So Lynn did a most amazing job there, collecting it all together. And there it is, it's available, you know. It's a bit like going back to joining the Dr. Healer network with Dan Benor, Dr. Dan Benor, bless him, who sadly, as we know, passed away just July last year. Another absolute, you know, huge investigator and scientific collator of evidence. And when I joined there, I was mind-boggled that he'd produced 3 volumes. I mean, you know, look at the size of these, like 3 volumes of research into healing, healing research, volume 1, 2, and 3. Still highly recommended.
Can I ask a pedantic question? So quite often we look at how we can help our own health and take measures to maximize our own health, but I've never thought of what steps I should take to maximize my energy field. So are there any I can take?
Well, going back to Professor Valerie Hunt, and some of her work is still available. She passed away good while ago now, I think probably about 15 years ago. She did a lot of work, and as I mentioned, she showed the effect of the human energy field with meditation. Big thumbs up. I've been meditating 30 years now, so that's worked for me. You know, I'm still going strong. And of course, what you eat. We are what we eat, or as my nutritional therapist told me, no, it's not what we eat, it's what we absorb. We are what we absorb, you know, so step further. So those are very important, obviously. And she showed with her video with the filter, she showed the benefits and the huge effects on the human energy field. So those are 2 major ones that I think everyone can do. You can eat healthily, eat as much organic food as you can, less processed food, eat healthily, in other words, you know, which is more and more difficult, obviously, with the crisis, you know, financial difficulties people find themselves in. So many people are on the breadline, so to speak. Yeah, look after yourself. Healthy exercise, you know, good regular exercise. But, you know, it's a good question. Which is the chicken and which is the egg? Is your energy field good because of the way you look after your body, or is your body good because of the way you look after your energy field?
Yes.
It's a really interesting point. And I tended to think it was the way of, as I've just been saying, well, if we do this with our bodies, then our energy field will be all nice and good, and it'll be, you know, that'll be great. But I think as I've gone more and more down the line, time-wise, you know, exploring, I think it's very much, I think, more in balance, and maybe even tipping that the energy field is primary, and the physical body is secondary, so that we come into this life, okay, with a bit of a clean slate. Although I'll come back to that. We come in and we've got an energy field, and then lots of things, you know, whether it's pollution, electromagnetic radiation, trauma, you name it. It can impinge onto our energy field. The disturbance in the balance of our energy field then has a knock-on effect on the physical body, and that can lead to the development further down the line of physical ailments.
Yeah.
In much the same way as, perhaps, less controversially saying, we have our genome, we have our genetic blueprint, and that is affected by the environment. Again, the things we've talked about, especially, where we live, what the radiation levels are, what food we take in, what sort of upbringing we have, what traumas we have. The same, really. The combination of the environment and the genetic will lead to things being expressed that we carry in the genome, which may not be expressed if we didn't have the relevant triggers to trigger them. And I see the human energy field in much the same way, that it becomes affected by the environment and all the things that we are exposed to on this planet. But coming back to what I was alluding to, I'm a great believer in reincarnation. I've become, I was always very interested, but I've become, a believer. So I think people come into this lifetime carrying a certain amount of energetic baggage already. So people who do hypnotic regression therapy, spiritual mediums, you name it, lots of people have given accounts of what happens when there's an unresolved issue, or maybe you departed the previous life a little bit sort of traumatically or violently. It can impinge on your health in this lifetime. Just to give you an example of that, one of the therapies that I've found, you mentioned about our local Enfield Centre for Natural Health integrative project, and we've been looking at every therapy under the sun. And one of my colleagues in Enfield, a GP called Dr. Michael Carmy, and his wife Louise Carmy, they were part of our original founder members back in 1993 with the project. But they have become involved in very much promoting a therapy called Havening Techniques therapy. And this is a derivative of the tapping technique, freedom technique, which people are fairly familiar with, but not so familiar with this development that was facilitated by Paul McKenna, the well-known hypnotherapist, in conjunction with two American physicians, two brothers, the Rudin brothers. And that's being promoted and taught now worldwide. Basically, you can take any trauma and relieve it by this process of releasing it with havening, which they've changed it from tapping to more a stroking over the same areas, like on the meridians on the face and down the arms and the palms of the hand. And there's a lot of scientific, explanation about this. Leads to, release of oxytocin, and it has an effect on the amygdala where trauma is stored, that part of the brain, with the fight or flight response, and everything goes on there in response to, fear, if you like. So things that are traumatic in this lifetime, just the sort of examples that come to mind are PTSD. So anyone involved in traumatic experiences, especially like first responders or members of the armed forces, they carry this trauma and are severely affected by it. And it can be extremely well treated with this havening technique. So think of this: you come into life, you're born. I remember you mentioned about home births and GP units births. I had a very wise midwife called Barbara Maloney. She would look into the eyes of newborn babies and she'd say, "That's an old soul," as you, or "That one's going to be trouble," etc. She had this very knowing way about her. Very experienced midwife. She taught me everything. And you come in and you're carrying a whole load of angst or trauma or misprogramming, if you like, damage, which is reflected in your energy field. It's there for those who can see it. People, I can't quote you the actual books now, but people quite commonly who have got the psychic vision, for want of a better word, actually can say, I can see this disturbance in the energy field, which looks like you're still carrying a sword through that part of your body where you happen in this lifetime to have been complaining of this mysterious pain that the doctors can't get rid of. You still are suffering from that wound you sustained on the battlefield in the Middle Ages, where you were
And
run
for someone who can see that energy, what does it look like exactly?
Well, the people who describe it say, I can see a sword in your energy field.
Ah, okay.
As literal as that.
Literal as that.
It can be as literal as that. I suppose it's not necessarily as literal as that in the vast majority of cases, but it's an example to me that this is the potential for carrying on something from when you departed.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. On my journey with my wife, we went to see a lovely couple called Dennis Kelsey and his wife, Joan Grant. And Joan had far memory of her past lives. She wrote about 10 books of some of her past lives, which are incredibly entertaining and very educational about spiritual wisdom. And we went to see Dennis and Joan, and he was illustrating this point that we've been talking about, the effect of past lives. And he said, one of my psychiatrist friends came to see me down here at our farmhouse in Surrey, not far away from you, actually. And he came down there was one of these little corridors going down where you hung up all your farming togs and boots and, waterproofs, down until he went down to the kitchen, and there's the Aga burning, and all that. And he walked in and he came down there and then had an absolute panic attack because there were a brace of pheasants hanging up on a couple of pegs, and he brushed against these feathers and immediately had a total meltdown. And, after he'd had a stiff drink and been sort of, propped up in another room, Dennis said, do you want me to look into that? I can take you back and see where that's come from.
Mm.
And his fellow psychiatrist said, yes, please, I'd love to get rid of my phobia of feathers. I've had it, as long as I could remember. And so Dennis regressed him and found that he died on the battlefield, and he had been there left mortally wounded rather than being put out of his misery by his own army to save him being, captured by the enemy. He'd been left dying, and his last memory was being surrounded by vultures and being sort of practically pecked alive, eaten alive almost, or dying with that sort of, they would maybe just waiting around him, making a rustling of feathers, which was his dying memory from that lifetime. Mm. And he carried it over to this lifetime.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And that would have been imprinted in the energy field.
Right.
Whether you could see vultures in his energy field, probably not.
No,
but
probably not aware of it either.
No. It's a fascinating thing. When I did my Reiki training, which you mentioned, which I explored out of interest to do Reiki as another form of healing training, the Reiki master I worked with was very conscious of all the elements of the human energy field. Can't remember how many different vibrational rays he was talking about, but it was 150 or a good number. And all of those had to be tuned. It's like tuning an orchestra. All of those had to be working properly and had to be, as they were designed to be, as opposed to being, not flowing. Just like acupuncturists talk about, the energy is not flowing to the meridian, and I need to put a needle in that point, and that's going to help it on its way. So he was very much about getting the energy field right, and he used a whole range of different modalities, ranging from not just Reiki, but crystal skulls and, magnetic things you held and all sorts. Amazing. I mean, he did a great job. And that increased and sort of made me really understand that, that's where we're working on on the energy field. So coming back to when I joined the Dr. Healer Network and been to the conference, I mentioned about Professor Valerie Hunt. Amazing, UCLA, fantastic center of learning and research in America. The other person who made a big impression on me was Barbara Brennan, because I was recommended to read Hands of Light, the first book that she wrote. And the concept of someone who used to be a NASA scientist, who's now teaching healing, that really tickled my interest, and thought, well, that's interesting, you know, that to have someone that scientific, a bit like Professor Valerie Hunt. And here she is, she's now teaching people Hands of Light, a guide to healing through the human energy field. Sounds familiar.
Like a change from NASA, isn't it?
It's well, maybe not. I don't know. They're exploring the you know, to infinity and beyond, aren't they? Oh no, that was Toy Story. Sorry. But it's the same thing. And when did this? I'm just looking to see when Barbara first published this. But I mean, it's yonks ago, isn't it? Yonks ago, she's talking about all this. The human energy field. Yeah, you know, thank you so much for actually getting me to look back on all the collection of books that I've had, because it's made me think, I want to read these all again. That's a long time since I've read them. But Barbara Brennan, yeah, another guiding light in terms of describing the human energy field, describing the aberrations and the abnormalities more through her own energy, ability to sense energy or view energy. She was able to say, well, look, you know, your chakra's not spinning right, and I can see this particular variation of your energy field, which I associate with this particular psychological state. Incredibly advanced thinking. And, you know, we have at least one member of the Dr. Healer Network who's a Barbara Brennan School of Healing trained healer. And they're still doing, you know, great work, even though, you know, she's passed, hasn't she?
Yeah.
I would highly recommend, Alison, if you haven't read it, her third book, Core Light Healing.
All right.
Highly recommend that. It's almost like, you know, there's Barbara Brennan talking about, you know, the human energy field and ex-NASA scientists, and, you know, there's all these people over here saying, yeah, she's gone a bit potty, let's ignore her, you know, like the attitude would be of lots of doctors, you know, about healing generally, as we know. The third book, Core Light Healing, she's almost saying, like, now I'm going to tell you what I really believe. I'm really coming clean on this one now, you know, so that's brilliant. And as I say, highly recommend that. So the human energy field, two more books I would like to recommend to people about the human energy field. The first one, which is the classic, is James L. Oshman, Energy Medicine, The Scientific Basis.
Yep.
That is the, if you like, the go-to book, because here we have someone who's a serious scientist talking about the actual research into that field. And I'd just like to read you a little bit from the preface. And this is from Candice Pert. Candice Pert, Molecules of Emotion, she wrote, which is an amazing book. So if you haven't, if anyone wants to read an amazing book, Molecules of Emotion. But in the preface, he said, the publication of Energy Medicine, The Scientific Basis by Jim Oshman is a milestone in the history of medicine, which will open hearts and minds to new hypotheses and experimental approaches towards understanding important modes of healing previously thought to be too mysterious to be approached scientifically. Also, we may begin to have a new paradigm vision of the human body as a dynamic, shape-shifting bundle of multiple personalities, not merely layered, but capable of sudden and dramatic transformations, able to be stabilized in new healing states of mind and body. Wow.
Wow.
And here you have, you know, scientists talking this language, and it's like music to my ears, certainly.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
unfortunately, they're few and far between.
Yeah.
But that is the go-to book, Scientific Basis, Energy Medicine, the Scientific Basis. And then the other book, which I came across more recently, and this was thanks to my other healing organization that I belong to, the Association for Therapeutic Healers. And I was recommended there this lovely book, From Quantum Physics to Energy Healing. And people often say, yes, well, energy healing, of course, quantum physics explains it. You know, it's all to do with, you know, all these things, you know, whizzing around, quantum physics, you know, and it doesn't actually sort of explain it in a sense that there's been scientific experimentation which actually then says, well, this is what's happened with healing, and this is what's happened on the quantum level, and that explains it. It's more like sort of, the answer will come one day and it'll be quantum physics that solves it. That's what I think they're saying. But this is by a PhD, Joanna Blomqvist. Joanna Blomqvist. You know, I think it'd be a really cool idea to have a sort of a list of these references available when we, you know, I'll write them all down for you. And
lovely. And I can post that.
And I'd love, you know, for doctors who happen to wander in and you know, chance upon our Healing Awareness Week broadcast on Monday, to think, wow, that sounds interesting. I must go and read that. Because basically that's what happened to me. I think there was obviously an experiential thing, like, you know, oh, sensing energy. Oh, this happens, that happens. You know, personal experience led one to think, well, there's more to this than meets the eye. I must look into it. And, you know, I've never stopped looking into it. So quantum physics, and that's her on the back there. Fabulous book. I think those are the two scientific books that I would quote. Obviously, Valerie Hunt is no longer with us, and nor is Barbara Brennan, but their work lives on.
Yeah. And
there will come a day when the scientists will, especially the medical scientists, will say, it's a funny thing, we've been measuring this this fluctuation in the field, like, you know, signals from outer space, and we've been working on it, and we can now actually map it a bit, you know, and now we can actually sort of build a scanner that shows it, and we can actually demonstrate what all these people have been talking about for thousands of years, you know, all the, you know, Eastern mystical talk about chakras and healing and all that, and we can measure it. It's like, you know, there will be an energy scanner in hospitals, just like we have MRI scanners.
That would be a wonderful step forward, wouldn't it? Because I think so often the medical profession wants the evidence, and quite rightly so. You know, they decide what they're going to do next based on the evidence of tests before them, and it's an important step. But to have that kind of equipment that could give evidence of this kind would be pretty amazing going forward, wouldn't it?
I think it's an inevitable thing, but like when you look at the history of medicine, which I wrote about the history of medicine once or twice, you know, going right the way back to school, and often discoveries are made, and when they're first made, the person who stands up and says, look at this is interesting, look, they get shot down and pilloried and not believed. And maybe 100 years later, that they're then retrospectively and posthumously, sadly for them, recognized as being, you know, an incredible innovator and discoverer of an important principle, and everyone's accepting it, you know, and they're given credit, or they give the wrong person credit who came along 20 years later on the shoulders of the originator, and they get forgotten about because it's so long ago. Yeah,
I know that from my own experience looking after a close family member who was ill for a number of years, and we hear similar stories at the sanctuary. I was organising for some healing for her, as well as following the instructions of our GP and her various consultants. And so often when we'd go to see the consultant after having had tests, the consultant would say, I was not expecting these results. They've really stabilised. And whilst you've still got the condition, she was elderly, I'm, you know, what I'm doing would not achieve this result. What are you doing? And so I'd sort of take a deep breath, expecting to be laughed out the consulting room, and sort of, here we go. And so I would say about the healing. But I found that the response I got invariably was, I don't understand a word of what you've just said, but I know what these results tell me, and keep doing what you're doing, because I know that what I'm doing would not have achieved these by itself.
Sure. Absolutely right. And I mean, that's a sign of the open-minded,
Yeah.
higher level physician at work. There's a bit of I think it affects every walk of life. There's a bit of a temptation when you get to a certain age to get a bit stuck, shall we say, or even fossilized at that level, and you don't move forward. Whereas the really, open-minded, top-level expert in any field, really, they're always searching, they're always exploring and open to new possibilities, and that's great. But I worked with a consultant when I was doing my training, and he'd been an incredible innovator in psychosomatic approach to medicine and understanding the interaction between the mind and the body, but he'd sort of been a real innovator, and then he didn't move on. He stayed at the level he was at his peak, and then he was in later in life, he was just saying the same things without moving forward any further, shall we say. Yeah. But I think you're right. I think that most doctors, and certainly in general practice, we're very much like that. Patients will come in and say, I've been doing this and it's made my headaches get better, or whatever. We say, carry on doing it. It's great, but I don't mind if you're rubbing cow manure on your head 3 times a day. That's fine.
We never went that far.
Oh boy. So that's the scientific basis. I think that obviously, esoteric principles going back thousands of years have known about this human energy field, but until we can scientifically demonstrate it, it's going to be difficult for it to be adopted, certainly in medicine, in the Western style of medicine anyway. Now in China, they do a great job incorporating Western medicine with their traditional Chinese medicine techniques, acupuncture, etc. But I think the format and the education of doctors like yourself is so steeped in the principle of evidence-based medicine, and you've got to have a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial to prove something is real. If you haven't got that, it isn't real. So we have this credibility gap. That's what I like to think of. And that, I think, is our major problem in healing and getting the acceptance of healing to the stage where it's an integral part of every surgery and every hospital, is that credibility gap. Well, if we haven't got the proof, it doesn't work. Therefore, we won't look at really going into it anymore. If someone wants to do it and it's not doing any harm, like you say, whereas other places, my local nearest teaching hospital, the complementary therapy unit there, I won't name names, they would have been happy to have Reiki, like other hospitals have introduced, but one consultant, it was like an insult to his scientific mind and his intelligence, he felt, to even envisage having healing of that sort in his hospital. So he vetoed it. Whereas the other 20 other consultants on the board who would have made the decision were sort of saying, well, if it doesn't do any harm, can't see any harm in it, let's give it a go. And just one person's been enough to block the introduction. So, that's how it goes sometimes. You have to wait for people to retire or pass on or whatever.
Again, I think that's one thing about healing, isn't it? It can't do any harm. Sometimes when you take drugs, for example, for various conditions, and the drugs can do a lot of good. I'm not, saying that drugs do not have their place, but sometimes there can be side effects with some drugs. But with healing, you won't get a side effect. It won't give you any harmful side effect whatsoever. And can also be helpful if somebody is terminally ill. Because healing doesn't necessarily mean cure as such, but it can help bring a sense of calmness and peace to somebody who is facing a terminal illness, and just help them with where they're at that time. And I think that we all have a time for transitioning, And when that time is coming up, I don't think there's any doctor or any healer who could stop that process.
Absolutely right. And of course, I think we are, dying is still the big sort of taboo or the big fear, huge fear in society about death and dying, and the sort of real innovators in those areas like Kubler-Ross, etc., who worked on the hospice movement and introducing caring into dying, and have welcomed healing into hospice care. It's such a commonplace thing to have healers, Reiki therapists, etc., working in hospices, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Which is wonderful. But again, I suppose it's the attitude, well, they're dying, you can't do any harm, sort of thing.
Didn't quite mean it that way.
As we know, it's incredibly, soothing, relaxing, and there've been books written about healing into dying, as you were referring to. Absolutely.
And also sometimes medications can cause side effects that are unpleasant to experience, and healing through the relaxation it creates can help negate some of that feeling awful that's brought about by the medications.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it allows the doctors to give the medications to do what it needs to do, but makes it more bearable for the patient.
And I think that really touches on the whole idea that we want to see integration. It's there's always been this fear, I think, in the medical profession. It's like them against us. It's alternative. If people go down that road, they'll ignore the treatment we want to give, and that will mean that they won't get the benefits or potentially the cure of their ailment that we can give with the therapy we've got or the surgery we've got. But I think the combination of the two things is much more than 2 and 2 equals 4.
Yes, and very powerful.
It's how it should be. It's how it should. I was mentioning about the chakra shirt here.
Yes.
And Dr. Tom, can't remember his surname now, from Australia. He was introduced me to the Kirlian Club. You know about Kirlian photography, which is another way of recording on a quite a sort of simplistic level, 2-dimensional rather than 3-dimensional. The human energy field, looking at the hands, usually put on a plate, and then you get a discharge sort of picture measured onto a photographic film. We went to the Kirlian Club, and it blew my socks off because they had a guy there called Professor Korotkov from Russia. And I'd always been, in my medical training, I knew what Korotkov meant. It's the noises that you hear when you listen to the blood pressure, when you put the stethoscope on the elbow. They're called the Korotkov sounds.
Oh, right.
It was this guy's grandfather who'd actually, they were named after. And he was telling us, and they use Kirlian photography in standard medical care in Russia. He couldn't understand the West split, where things were either alternative or they were, mainstream allopathic medicine. So that hasn't occurred in Russia. Everything's still all one, so you can get things that we would say, well, that's just not scientific. But in Russia, it's remained within the mainstream.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating. And he gave us a talk on Kirlian photography, and then said, we have this conference in St. Petersburg. You come over to St. Petersburg and hear a lot more of what we have to tell you. Very interesting. And we make sure you're safe. We give you bodyguards and drive you around in armored vehicle. No problem in St. Petersburg. You will not be kidnapped. Do not worry. And we would go, oh, why did you tell me that?
A bit of a shock to the energy system, isn't it?
I think we quietly demurred on the opportunity to Petersburg, but it was very nice of him to think of us like that, So my healing experience, I mentioned about the workshops I did, and the first one, the Listening Heart, we did the old energy sensing of the aura. The next course I did, the Turning Point, fabulous course, absolutely amazing. And one of the wonderful things was there were patients of mine who were people who'd already done it on what we call the service team. In other words, the team of people who were supporting, if you like, the actual newbies taking the course. And so that they were patients, my patients, looking after me and sort of, if you like, supporting me and caring for me and literally holding me in various, you know, activities, which range from rebirthing to, you know, beating up mattresses and all sorts of things, you know, to let out your emotional angst. On the last day of that, I and well, we all were leaping around like absolute loonies, celebrating the end of the course, you know, with great joy. And I leaped around and came down on the my right foot and felt as if someone had kicked me violently on the back of my ankle. And I looked round to see who it was I'd collided with, and there was no one there. And what had actually happened is my Achilles tendon had ruptured.
Oh dear.
And so I was a bit laid up, and I was by the next day in hospital up in town under my friendly orthopedic surgeon, who proceeded to sew it back together again. The follow-up of the course was that on the Wednesday of that week, and there was me with my leg up in a hospital bed, and I was very lucky because I had health insurance, so it was a private hospital bed. I got television and decent food, so I was watching Top Gun when it first came out for the 99th time in my hospital bed, you know. But the team all got together and they said, Tim's in trouble with his you know, ruptured Achilles tendon. Let's all have a healing session and send him healing. They didn't ask me. I mean, they didn't have any way of contacting me, really. So they, on this Wednesday night, decided they and carried on this distant healing session for me. And I was lying in my hospital bed, and I got all this blue light coming at me.
Oh, how wonderful.
My eyes were shut. And normally it's sort of like pinky red, isn't it, when your eyes are shut tight? But it was all blue. Mm. It was very, very noticeable that there was this experience. I couldn't explain it. And then when I went back, you know, hobbling along on my elbow crutches to the next reunion, I said, what was happening on Wednesday night? And they said, oh, well, we sent you healing. And I said, well, it arrived. Thank you very much. And it was extraordinary because I had the most uneventful. I came round for the operation, and there's a nurse saying, "Do you want any painkillers? Do you want me to give you an injection? You know, is it painful?" And I said, "No." What pain? You know, I don't even need a paracetamol. Thank you very much. And I felt it was just the fact that this lovely group of people had all been sending me their well wishes, if you like, energetic healing. And I think that's whatever we do when we have prayers in church for people, we wish people well, you know, we send love to people within families, you know, mothers care for their child who's fallen over and banged their knee and, you know, rub it better. All these things, it's an energetic exchange, isn't it?
And I think setting the intention is so powerful for, you know, from a healing perspective, setting the intention that this person will you know, recover well and feel better.
Absolutely.
It's so helpful.
So that for me, being on the receiving end, I mean, feeling the aura is one thing, but being on the receiving end of these waves of blue lights, you know, lovely healing energy, was a wonderful experience. And again, that was something that I think having that experience just helped me accept that this wasn't something that I needed to sort of just, you know, dismiss as being wacky. You know, this was all stuff that was, you know, it was real, and I needed to understand it. You know, bit like
I have a silly question to ask you.
There are no.
Sometimes people who have, say, had a finger or a limb amputated can still feel that finger or limb. Would you say that the energy field has anything to do with that?
Possibly. I think very, very, very probably. But you can imagine that the stump of the nerve is still trying to report messages from what it used to be. There may be, if you like, you know, a false message from the damaged nervous system. But equally, when you actually do Kirlian photography, they've demonstrated very clearly that you still have the energetic outline of the limb.
Oh, that's interesting.
you can do the same thing with a leaf. You can actually cut a leaf in two and take a picture of it. And on the Kirlian photography, you can see the outline of the whole leaf still.
Oh, wow.
Fascinating, isn't it? So I think probably that I don't know what, it's probably both.
Yeah, I was thinking a combination of the two.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's absolutely right. So there's me. I was thinking healing is something I want to explore, really. And the Dr. Healer Network had quite a few people there who were associated with the CHO and the other group that I mentioned, the Association for Therapeutic Healers. And there was a healing course starting up. So I signed up for it and waited for it to start and waited for it to start. And then they told me, actually, we've actually decided to stop doing that healing training. But one of our members is setting up her own school of healing. And you need to sort of get in touch with her. And that was Delcia McNeil. And she set up her own school of healing called the Rowan School of Healing in conjunction with Kate Mackenzie. And I signed up with them and did healer training, for my own interest and benefit rather than, doing it as a profession. So, friends and family level. But that was quite intensive and very grounded and involved annual, very lovely retreats up in Cumbria in beautiful surroundings and lots of healer practice and the ATH, Association for Therapeutic Healers, very interesting origins and it comes from a very much dance and arts background. And the whole concept is that really any therapeutic activity, there is an energy component, whether you're doing massage or whether you're doing reflexology. Well, they're talking about energy anyway, but, general practice, anything, there's an energetic component. And the more you're aware of it and the more you can utilize it, the better you're going to be at doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's where the ATH comes in. And I trained with Delcia and Kate, and that was absolutely great. So that was my, if you like, healer training. They were originally NFSH, and then the NFSH is a little bit sort of down on touching patients and talking to patients. So two no-nos. And Delcia and Kate were both massage therapists and psychotherapists, so or counsellors. So touch and talking were part of who they were.
Yeah.
So they said, well, look, we're going to do our own style of healing, which will involve touch and it will involve talking, or it won't involve not talking anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm still.
Yeah. Go on.
I'm still with that group. I'm one of their core group, one of their committee, which is great because it's just another viewpoint, another angle. And with healing, the interesting thing is, as you've probably learned, is there are hundreds of different angles,
Yes.
hundreds of schools of healing, hundreds of teachers who think they have found the way, the only way. It's another example of all fields of endeavor, whether it's religion or politics, where we're trying to explain the human condition, but there's so many different interpretations and so many different visions that you would think that there might only be one, but no, there's all these multiple ones.
We've
But
got a portfolio of solutions, haven't we?
We have. I bought this little device here, which is one of my paperweights. Can you see that?
Beautiful, beautiful.
So you turn it round that way,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's clear, and you turn it round that way, and you see all the colours of the rainbow.
Oh, wow.
But the nice thing about that struck me during the personal development, you see it's got all these different facets.
Yes.
Well, when we say I'm this type of healer, we're sitting on one of those little facets and we can't see all the other ones because it's just like that facet there. And someone else around here says, but no, this is the way. And no, Reiki is the way. But my own belief, and certainly in the Dr. Healer Network, we believe there is just energy. There's different frequencies, fine. There's different ways of applying it, and some people are good at it and some people are moderate at it. But we all can do it, I think, is my belief. In the Dr. Healer Network, it is part of the human energy field condition that we can exchange energy.
Yeah.
Or we can channel energy through us from another outside source.
Yeah.
The rest is fancy dressing. That's what I believe, anyway. I like to keep it simple. It's the KISS principle, you know?
Yeah.
Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah.
One of the things I was saying, picking up on your comment about the healer training in the Lake District, we offer, you can train and qualify to be a healer at the Harry Edwards Healing Sanctuary. And we actually provide overnight accommodation for some of our students who absolutely love to come and stay over at the sanctuary, because they can feel the very special energy around the sanctuary and around the grounds as well. We've got 30 acres of grounds at the sanctuary, and you can see some of the grounds behind me in the screenshot behind me overlooking the Surrey Hills. And a lot of people who are learning about energy find it absolutely fascinating and very restorative to be in that energy, and a beautiful backdrop to learning about healing as well.
Couldn't agree more. I think it's the most fantastic place, and I feel privileged to be associated with you down there. And you know, you've got the most fantastic history going back to Harry Edwards himself. I mean, member number one. What more can we say?
Absolutely. What more could you ask for? And we're so delighted that you're one of our patrons. So thank you so much to agreeing to do that.
No, delighted. I remember coming down to the Harry Edwards Sanctuary when it was first renovated, when it came out from, you know, being, if you like, kept at very little maintenance or expenditure, and it had a total makeover. That's the word, isn't it? Yes. And the big reveal happened then, and the Dr. Healer Network were invited down, and this must be, what, 25 years ago, I should think, something like that. And it was fantastic. I mean, coming down there and experiencing the energy of the place. But isn't that interesting? The energy of the planet. The planet has different energies, and there are places that are renowned for healing. Just out of interest, that one behind me there, that one.
Middle picture?
That's a picture there taken in France. And that's a picture from the tower of a castle in a place called Puy-Vert. And it's looking down on a field where the Dalai Lama tried to buy this, well, acres and acres and acres of woodland and fields to build the biggest stupa planned for Europe. And the French planning commission foiled him, and he couldn't buy it because he got turned down. But that's the energy of that place. We used to go and stay there with the Reiki group that I belonged to. And you could stand on rocks that the farmhouse had been built on, which came up into the kitchen and were part of the wall. And you could stand on the rock and you literally buzzed.
Wow.
The energy there was so incredible. People who with psychic vision, which doesn't include me particularly, said that they could see that there was an interdimensional portal on this site. And they could actually see other beings, if you like, on the other side, which is all very amazing to me.
It'd be interesting to sort of find out more about the energy of the sanctuary, because I think quite often, and many people say this as well as myself, when you turn the corner and start your drive up the driveway, you can feel a change in energy, and the energy feels much more comforting and relaxing. And bearing in mind we're on a country road, so we're not exactly in an inner city.
No.
But there is a change in the energy as you come up. And I think also there's been quite a lot of evidence as well about the benefits of doing things like forest bathing, spending time in nature, and the impact that can have on your own energy as well, hasn't there?
Sure. Absolutely agree with that. And of course, it takes us back to the days of pilgrimages and the old grey track, or the old straight track. I think was the book about the ley lines, and how these ley lines were, the ancients were aware of these, and they built monuments on the top of hills, and churches tended to get built on these sort of sacred sites, which were often the sites of temples of from prehistory, before the churches, before Christianity. because of an awareness of the energetic effects and waterfalls and, you know, this and that.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly when I have a healing session at the sanctuary, and if it's a nice day, I love to have the windows open because you can hear a waterfall in the rose garden. I find that such a beautiful backdrop to having a healing session, just so relaxing. And I suppose in terms of the energy field, healing is really about trying to rebalance that energy field a bit, isn't it?
I think restoring balance.
Restoring.
Absolutely. But wouldn't it be lovely to see a 3D color, you know, video picture of what you're doing as
Yes,
well?
absolutely. Yes. Have it on the screen like doctors do in the operating theatre.
Well, yes. Just a little bit more over there, please. You know,
Yes.
on the workshops we did, of course, people would come along and they'd be talking about the most horrendous experiences in their lives, which, you know, if you like, traumatized them. And they'd be invited to come up and speak in front of the whole group and you know, be supported by the group. And we had a tradition there that when someone had been completed, we didn't clap them, because clapping is quite a harsh thing when you're very vulnerable and very delicate. And we had an energy applause, which was called a finger trickle. So the whole audience would actually sort of put their hands out and actually sort of trickle energy from their hearts down into their fingertips, and the person would be invited to stand with their hands, you know, their palms open to receive, you know, standing like that. And inevitably, someone up front, having sometimes as many as 50 people giving them the old finger trickle energy, everyone could feel it.
Yeah.
To the extent that, you know, you were told, when you've had enough, just put your hands across your heart, to say that's enough, thanks, I'm topped up. But
healers can be very good at picking up energy, can't they? They can be very sensitive to it. Might not see it, but they can be very sensitive to it.
People who've become trained as healers, or who are natural healers, obviously, as you say, but this is just everyone. These are guys off the street. You know, I never saw anyone who never could sense what they were being had projected in the way of, you know, loving energy towards them.
Yeah.
To the extent where, you know, like, oh, that's enough, you know, take no more.
Oh, well, it's been lovely chatting to you. We're coming up to the sort of top of the hour. You've mentioned the Dr. Healer Network. How do people join the Dr. Healer Network if they're interested in joining? And it's open to healers and doctors as well, isn't it?
It's open to anyone, really. But yes, doctors, particularly doctors, we'd like to get on board, or people working in hospitals, nurses, anyone in the medical professions generally. We're very happy to accept people, and we've just started our live talks again, traditionally set up in London at various university halls, or most recently we've adopted the Rudolf Steiner House in Regent's Place, which is a lovely, lovely venue, full of lovely architecture and curving corridors and wood, and a lot of lovely thought about the energy the place has gone into it, you know, as you can imagine, with it being Rudolf Steiner House. And we've got our first talk coming up this Saturday. It's the first time after lockdown that we're actually coming to meet up in the flesh.
So just to clarify for people listening now, this recording will be put out after that event.
It will be, sadly, but obviously we'll be continuing.
Don't go up on the 6th of May.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a plug to get people to come, but it's just we're so excited about meeting up again.
Yeah.
And very much in the line of what we've been talking about, we've got one of our members, Rosemary Farrow, who's talking about a Reiki project done for people in the medical profession over the lockdown to help them deal with all the stress that they've been going through. And she's actually done a research project on that and is presenting her findings. So that should be very interesting. And I might have, we're going to try and record it, but just using the Zoom recording with an iPhone on a tripod. So we're just, you know, testing the water in terms of the technology.
Yeah.
So, wow, is that
people can sign up via your website?
signing up, yes, the application to sign up is on our website indeed, and there's a simple application, 2-page application form to download and send off to our treasurer. The address is there, and yeah, welcome aboard. We're continuing with both Zoom talks as well as the live talk, so we're keeping a sort of combination, and we're hoping that we can get the technology such that we can do hybrid live talks, so people around the country don't miss out. I might have to chat to you a little bit about how to do the Facebook experience as well. You know, we can invest in a little bit of equipment as well, I think.
Of course.
At the moment, it's iPhone and a tripod.
and trying your way. I know. I've been there. Well, Tim, thank you so very much.
Link up might be the major hazard up there, because it's such a lovely venue, but the walls are very, very thick.
Oh.
Come and go a little bit. It's that business of, could you just hold the phone up there, please?
I wish you the best with that one.
Oh, bless you, Alison. Bless you. And yes, sorry I can't be down to visit you during Healing Awareness Week. I wish you well, and I wish everyone in the healing world, the Healing Trust and the UK healers, etc., the very best in spreading the word about healing, because it really feels like, now is the time where there's a readiness, much more of a readiness. Over the last, certainly in my career, things have changed hugely, and I think we're ready as a medical profession to hear more about this. So,
and I think it's so lovely talking to someone with a GP background who can see the benefits of healing and as a complementary therapy to the medics, because obviously we're not trying to undermine medics in any way whatsoever. What they do is an amazing job and amazing work, but we're just saying here's little bolt-on that can help things even further. And it's lovely to hear a GP being supportive of the healing work.
Thank you. I mean, not just a bolt-on though. I mean, it'd be lovely for doctors to think this should be part of my training.
Yes, you're right.
I mentioned my wife and how I think, she's been responsible for me being to the position I am in now, and being interested in the whole area. But one of her carers, who was a psychiatrist, she taught me how to give distant healing to all the patients coming in each day by putting my hands on the notes. And this is what she did, and actually connecting with everyone through that sort of focal point of the records. And starting the energetic process, from that point on. So as doctors, we didn't in our surgeries generally do the healing ourselves. Generally, we had a healer who worked with us. But I must say, every time I got my stethoscope out and put it on someone's back, I was actually having the intention that there was healing energy going.
How lovely.
Way, which I thought, well, that's quite a good sort of covert way of just increasing the healing. But I have to say to all my I believe all my GP and medical colleagues generally, because they've gone into the profession with the intention to heal their fellow man, that they are all unconsciously mainly carrying out healing, because where your intention goes, that's where the energy flows, as we know.
And that is a common theme, isn't it? Because both doctors and healers have the same intention to try and help people get better, improve with their conditions. The intention is exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. And maybe you're mentioning about pharmaceuticals. I think maybe in the future we'll be seeing more of the energy and less of the drug, because as you know, drugs do have side effects. And since I've retired, I mean, a lot of the common drugs that were, whether it's paracetamol or ibuprofen or a whole range of things that was looked upon as safe as houses, have now been had a real accurate reflection of what their risks are, made public more. And it's like, well, we're running out of things that are safe, really. There isn't any drug that's really safe when you look at the compendium of the pharmacopoeia. with all the list of potential side effects. Every drug has got pages and pages and pages. So, you know, this one's 1 in 100, this one's 1 in 1,000, this one's 1 in 10,000. You know, but you know, they've all. There's nothing that, like, there's no drug that doesn't have a whole list of side effects. Put it like that.
Yeah.
And as you rightly said, healing has never had a significant side effect attributed to it.
No.
People talk about a healing crisis, certainly, where, you know, maybe there's quite a sort of shock to the system and energy flows, and that can be quite unsettling when energy suddenly starts flowing, just like a dam unblocking, perhaps.
Yes.
But yes, all good in the long run.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been lovely talking with you, Tim. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview.
My pleasure.
I hope you have a lovely holiday.
I shall come back refreshed in energy, because the energy in Crete is very, very good.
Tim's going on a yoga retreat, which is why we're doing this as a recording. But thank you so much for agreeing to do this so that we could still include you as part of Healing Awareness Week.
I'm there. I'm with you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tim.